5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Wow. All right. So, where are we? Who are you guys? What's going on here?
So, I'm Matt Augustine, and this is Parrish Suthar.
How you doing?
We're both. I'm a developer, and he's an architect on Ray Ozzy's concept development team.
Cool. Well, let's talk about that concept development team. So, you're just prototyping things, or are you building stuff to ship?
Yeah, we do a lot of prototyping. It's basically anything Ray wants us to work on is what we do. So, at the moment, we're focused on SSE and live clipboard.
So what's SSE? What does that stand for?
Give an overview.
So SSE is simple sharing extensions, and it was a concept that might have been born as far back from the development of notes. And the idea was that there was a need to synchronize information, the predominant case being contact information, calendar information, between different people and different systems. And the idea Ray had come up with was to leverage a ubiquitous medium by which this information could be exchanged, and that medium was RSS. So simple sharing extensions right now is built on top of RSS, and it leverages the feed format that is out there by extending it, putting in a namespace that allows us to put in attributes that allow people not only to consume RSS content, but to publish RSS content as well. So in other words, we're making RSS bidirectional by incorporating SSE, or simple sharing extension semantics.
Outstanding.
So that's the main goal behind SSE, and what we're trying to do, as Matt had pointed out, is we're not so much of a product-oriented team. We're trying to essentially flesh out these ideas that Ray comes up with so that they can be applied at the appropriate points, whether it's in another product internally or even externally.
Very cool.
Right. And I'll just give a live clipboard overview.
Sure. Yeah. What is live clipboard?
So live clipboard is a technology that we came up with for copying and pasting data between websites and also between the web and desktop. So an example might be copying a contact from your Hotmail contact list and then pasting it into some other website, and rather than just selected text copying and pasting over, you actually get the underlying structured data. So contacts, events are a couple of examples that we've shown in demos before, but they can really extend to any kind of data type.
Now, is this what's the underlying technology there? Clearly JavaScript. I mean, what's going on?
Right. So there's a couple components, I guess, on the web. We tried to come up with a technique that would work in all browsers and not require any additional software installation. So it's basically HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And right, so it.
But my only question would be then, JavaScript is an inherently objectless language, so it doesn't really have a notion of structure and objects. So how do you define something as a contact? How does the recipient of the paste operation know that it's getting a contact?
Okay, so live clipboard itself doesn't dictate the structure of the actual data items, but we've been using a couple emerging standards called microformats for that. That's one example, and have my
let's see. Let me zoom in on that.
T-shirt on.
Microformats.org. We do it with class.
This is from the first 1-year anniversary party in San Francisco a couple of weeks ago.
All right.
But you could use other data formats. Microformats work pretty well, but with live clipboard, the core of it is just an XML document that we specified, which allows for carrying more, one or more data formats, and then within that, you basically mark it up as what is the data type. So in the microformat case, you might say the type is vCard and the content type is application XHTML plus XML or whatever it is, I can't remember.
Okay.
But it's up to the application that implements it to iterate through those formats and then find one that it understands.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's an interesting concept because, as Matt pointed out, we tried to accomplish two things. One was creating a consistent UI-based mechanism, and Matt, I'm sure in the demo, can show you, like, we have icons that represent the semantics behind live clipboard, like, hey, it's almost live clipboard aware. And the other aspect was the format of the container, the live clipboard XML document. So by creating that and sort of hoping to get adoption, we're trying to create a bridge between not only website to website information exchange, but also website to desktop application exchange. So we have screencasts already that are available on the MSDN site as well as other locations that allow users to see how we can apply the live clipboard technology to move information from a website to a desktop application effortlessly, as opposed to today where it's kind of clunky, it's broken. Most applications, they have to have some type of gentleman's agreement behind scenes to exchange information.
Sure.
So we're trying to embrace Ray's idea, which is to break down those barriers and then come up with a common language or common format so that information can move anywhere.
Cool. And by using micro formats, you're basically you're platform agnostic, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty much.
Microformats is a very popular way to represent content, especially in web-based mediums, because it's HTML representations of content, but it's by no means limited to microformat content. So if you have existing V-card representations in the traditional sense, Live Clipboard will work just as well with those. So I think that's the other benefit. Being an XML container, what we do is we say put whatever you want, declare what you're putting in there, so that somebody on the other side, to the paste operation question you had, they can go, well, I understand H cards, micro format versions of contacts, so I'll take that versus a V card. So the idea is provide a wealth of different representations of the same information so that the consumer can pick the appropriate ones for them.
Excellent.
Right.
Very cool.
And another point for using micro formats, especially in the web scenarios, it makes a lot of sense, because if you're, as a web designer, going to go to the effort of marking up your contact or event data or whatever you have as micro formats, which is relatively straightforward, well, once you have it in that representation, then adding live clipboard support is really straightforward. So if I have a page that has a contact represented in the page and it's marked up as a micro format, an H card, then basically adding a few lines of script, I can make it copyable for live clipboard. So that's one of the reasons that we've kind of embraced the micro formats as one of the primary data formats that we've demonstrated.
Very cool.
Would it
Yeah,
be
why don't
easy if I
you-
just demonstrate?
Yeah, give
live
us a
clipboard?
demo. Sure.
Okay.
Why not? That's a really nice demo screen. Let me just zoom in on this guy. All right.
Okay, so here, this page is available on the internet. You can get basically just search for live clipboard example, and it should come up as one of the top links. But this is a list of contacts you see here, and then below you see I have a list of events as well. And next to each one is this live clipboard control. So basically what this means is I can select it, or I can right-click on it, and I get the context menu. So if I select copy, for example, it's actually copied the data for this contact in H-card format. So let me just paste it in Visual Studio here so we can see what it looks like. So here it is. This is exactly what was on the clipboard in CF text. And the specification for this format is also available on the internet. We've released it under Creative Commons license, so it's open for anyone to use. In this example, we see a single format, type vcard, and content type application XHTML plus XML. That's basically what it means hcard. So this is the hcard microformat, and then the contents within this item is here is just that's an hcard. So if you had a page with a contact represented this way, then making it copyable for live clipboard purposes is really simple. You add some scripts that we have as an example on our demonstration site, and it makes it so that when it'll have the control and then put this data up on the clipboard when someone copies. So this is on the clipboard now, and if I go back to this page and just go down here, I have an empty space. To paste, I can right click again, click paste, and you see that the whole contact is pasted there. It's not just, I didn't have to select text or anything. It's almost like copying and pasting items around. This is showing it within the context of a single page, but this would work, on two different websites. It would work if you copied it from one browser and pasted it into another one, so it crosses that application boundary, which is really what we're trying to achieve.
Very cool.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, when Matt had done a lot of this work originally for the eTech demo, when Ray presented this stuff, a lot of the work had been done in Firefox. So just reinforcing the point that the concepts or the techniques here are not specific to IE or Microsoft-related technologies.
Certainly. And I mean, clearly, there's nothing binary happening in the sense that it's not an ActiveX control. You don't have to have any EXE running. It's just simply creative use of XML, CSS, and JavaScript.
And
Pretty much.
for that matter, functionality built into the browser. Because a lot of people kind of trip on the fact that when that copy menu comes up, it's the browser's copy menu. We're not doing anything specific.
Understood.
Right. I could have just as easily. Well, if you want to show it, I can.
Well, I mean, let's ask this question though.
Okay.
What about say Firefox running on Linux?
Mm-hmm.
It's still going to work. 'Cause
Yeah.
You're going to get the
Right.
Firefox right-click menu. It's independent of the platform it happens to be running on.
Of course, yeah, it works. Well, so far we've verified that it works in Safari, Firefox, IE6, IE7. It works on Firefox on the Mac, and I would assume it works in Linux as well. I haven't tried it, but maybe one of our viewers can verify that.
I'm sure they will.
But yeah, it's our intention is to have the widest accessibility possible with this control. Now, with that said, we love it if in the future browsers such as IE or Firefox, whatever, if they want to build native support in for this to enhance the experience, that would be great. But even if that occurs, we want to make sure that this baseline experience is still available in all browsers.
So let's talk about some real world. I mean, that's really cool what you've shown there. But how about a real world example? I mean, could I take my contact, drag it into a site for registration purposes, or like this is who I want to be?
Right.
Okay.
And I would encourage anyone who's interested in this and going to our screencast page and watching all of them, because
And these are on MSDN?
they're actually on Ray Ozzy's
Blog.
So,
All right.
and,
You kind of span both MSDN and
Right.
website.
Cool.
and we're working on finding a centralized place for all this stuff. but-
Channel 9.
Yeah, Channel 9. There you go. But for
We have
now,
screencasts. All right.
you have to find it. But basically, those screencasts include the demo that Ray gave at eTech. They include the demo that Parrish and I gave at Mix. And then there's a new screencast that I gave at the bar camp in San Francisco and the Supernova workshop. So, and maybe if we have time, I can show some of that.
Sure.
now, but-
Well, let's one of the things that we need to do on Channel 9, I mean, since you guys are engineers and developers, let's talk about briefly like the problem space and what this solves. Like, what's going on here? I mean, trust me, we just talked about, you gave a sample. I can see why it's valuable, but what was the problem space? What's going on here? What's this trying to solve?
Well, to state it really simply,
Sure.
The concepts of copying and pasting data between applications have been around for,
A long time.
a really long time, right? And they really don't exist on the web. I mean, you can select text and copy from one page, and if there's a form on another page, you can paste there. But there's no concept of copying, a whole object of data, a whole data object. And Ray really, he embraced this idea that we need to basically get with the program here on the web. Like this is crazy, right? Like all these things that people took for granted in Windows apps and other desktop apps, we should be able to do on the web. And if you look at it in a slightly different context, it's really breaking down the data silos that we see, or I guess sometimes referred to as walled gardens, where you have one social networking site where you spend a lot of time filling out your profile and defining who your friends are and all that kind of stuff, and then another one that you want to try out, you've got to do all that over again, right? There's no your data is locked up in one place or another, so this really breaks down those walls. Another wall is the one between the web and the desktop. And, today those are really two different domains. If I have data on my computer locally in my Outlook calendar or whatever, there are ways of sharing that with with websites, but they're really, they're pretty much one-off solutions. So, Hotmail and Outlook will require one piece of software to be installed, and some other web application might require another one. There's just, we really need to make it easier to tie together desktop and web applications and share data that way. So that's really what the intention is.
Fantastic.
Yeah, another thing to think about is the fact that, again, we're using the term XML, but the importance there is it's structured information. And copy and paste largely meant unstructured. I copy a line of text here and I paste it over here. With the live clipboard concept, the idea is to provide structured information in a meaningful fashion so that you can perform richer operations. So one of the screencasts that's available is demonstrating how you can take this contact and potentially move it into something like Outlook, by doing a copy and paste gesture as opposed to some funky set of steps that is really arcane. So the problem space is, okay, not only do we need to build these bridges, but we need to make the information as rich as possible.
Absolutely.
So this is another aspect of being XML and what that affords.
Very cool. So like one of the things I could do would be drag a contact from a web page and throw it into Outlook, or throw an event, obviously, like you have an example there. I could actually copy, paste it into Outlook. It'll show up as an event I need to remember to go to.
And hopefully
which is incredibly
we can
cool.
share that later, because I actually have my latest demo that we built actually does that.
Very cool. Well, we should show that. So let's talk a little bit more about how you built, how this is implemented. I mean, I realize it's not rocket science from a development point of view, but it's very interesting because it hasn't been around before. So with the use of microformats and JavaScript, and what have you guys done? What have you come up with here? Let's talk about that.
I mean, you said it's not rocket science, and it's not, and that's that's our intention. We're trying to. I mean, it's really the reason this hasn't happened isn't because it's technically impossible. It's just because it's hard for everyone to agree on the common formats that we need to accomplish it. And the microformats community is kind of solving one part of that issue, which is we need common data formats for these very commonly used types of data like contacts and events, reviews, and hopefully many others coming. The other one is just what is the transport mechanism between web pages? Well, we try to solve it just find the simplest thing that works, right?
Sure.
And there's already a Windows Clipboard. There's already a Clipboard in pretty much any operating system, any modern operating system, and we should just reuse that, right? And that's what we're trying to do. So at every step, we try to define things to be as simple as they possibly could, but still be flexible enough to accomplish the generic problem. And hopefully we've done that, but we didn't think that we could do it in a vacuum. So we've actually put that specification up. We have a mailing list. We've got a lot of great community participation on both defining the live clipboard spec, defining the SSE spec, experimenting with different implementations of the live clipboard control. We're open to that, and we love it, and it's actually improved the technology because we've taken some of those suggestions that we've gotten from the mailing list, et cetera, and actually incorporated them into the spec. So that's fantastic. It's been a great experience.
Sure, definitely. It's the new age.
Yeah,
so,
it is.
Very, very cool. So yeah, you touched on the fact that because it's XML and the ubiquity of XML, right? Most things can parse XML, understand what it's supposed to mean, to give it a schema, and has some way of understanding what the data means. But you made a comment earlier that microformats aren't a critical component in the sense that you said you can use microformats. Let's talk about that componentization of this architecture. So I could take out microformats and replace it with what?
Anything really.
Anything?
And you shouldn't just think of it as replacing. You can augment. So you can you have more than one format or more than one representation of the same item. So let's say I have a website that exposes contact data, and I want people to be able to copy that. Well, I could put up H card microformat and a V card, which is pretty pretty well-established standard that a lot of desktop applications already know how to parse. And whatever other format I want, I can put them all up on the live clipboard. And when I paste that, then it's up to that application to decide which format it understands. So by offering up multiple formats, I really increase the number, or increase the chances that the consuming app is going to understand my format.
Interesting.
And the live clipboard document, I would say, the specification itself, it's not limited as to what types of data can be in there. So it can be within each data item. It could be XML, as we see in the microformat case, but it could also be non-XML. It could just be unstructured data, and it just passes it along. So.
And it has some sort of identifier that the client is able to know that I'm getting this. I mean, that's really cool. So it's like an extensible cut and paste operation, or extensible paste. Very interesting.
It's also, if you do look into it a little bit more, we talked largely about the things that you can copy and paste as if they were by value operations. So I copy a contact and I move it from point A to point B, from Outlook to a web app, or from web app A to web app B. And that's interesting in and of itself, but we also have support for feeds. So you can copy references to feeds. We have we have a section in the live clipboard format for presentation style. So in addition to defining content, you can also define how you want it to be presented as a hint to the consumer to say, oh, you know what, I want you to present it as HTML, even though the content itself may not be HTML.
Okay.
So, we have by value, we have by reference, we have feeds, and we have the ability to separate content from presentation. Again, it's all part of the format, but these were explicit things we tried to incorporate to make the live clipboard, implementation as flexible as possible for as many different uses as we could get. Again, it's a bridging technology.
It's a bridging technology.
So we should probably talk a little bit more. You mentioned the feeds and bridging. Well, up to now we've basically just been talking about copying and pasting, some
Content.
item or something.
Yeah.
Really, the second part of this, and the part that I think is perhaps the most interesting, is the what Ray calls wiring the web, or the wiring aspect. And that's really, if you think back to like Paste Special and Windows apps, or using Olay or something to actually set up a persistent connection between data in two different applications. The analog to that in Live Clipboard is you have a feeds section. So we use RSS feeds or Atom or whatever SSE. You can have multiple feeds associated with the data itself that you've copied that provides the destination app a way to get updates for that item. So, for example, you could copy someone's contact information from their blog and paste it into Outlook, and then, if that person updates the microformat on their blog, well, you'll be able to get that update because you can periodically check one of the feeds that content's in.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of touches upon the concept of, with Live Clipboard, a lot of the gestures are discrete, and they're not necessarily in the context of a bigger system. Going to CardSpace or something that's an authentication or identity management system, you could certainly build in Live Clipboard semantics and perform those discrete gestures after you've already authenticated into the site, and then your ACLs have been set up and do all kinds of interesting things. But that's not necessarily, as Matt pointed out, that's not the goal of Live Clipboard. Another question that we had gotten in the past with respect to Live Clipboard is the security ramifications. Like, hey, if I copy a credit card info and I can put it into this Live Clipboard format, what are the ramifications? And again, this wasn't a problem space we were trying to tackle with respect to, how do I secure information? If you keep in mind that a user is performing a gesture to move the data from one point to another, then in many cases it's no different than if you go to a popular website, you go to eBay to go buy something, and you copy your credit card number from somewhere in your personal Outlook calendar or contact list, and you say, this is my my credit card number, and I paste it in. I mean, the user gesture is what we're saying. There's some conscious decision that the user is making to do this. And this kind of goes back to the whole idea that we don't have script in the background that's trying to move the data. It's always through a user gesture.
Okay.
So that's kind of what we've sort of stood upon in terms of our
However,
goal.
if I may play devil's advocate, or just maybe bad hacker. What I meant by bad hacker was one with not a lot of skill. So let's just say that I know for a fact that I can use exec script to do copy paste operations. So if I if I were able to figure out the HTML on a page by using a XML HTTP request to go get the content of the page, parse the XML, look for these contact things in there, and then take them and copy them or paste them somewhere. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is it is a scriptable. It's not always user gesture. It would be hard to pull off, but of course you guys have already tackled that. Mine was a bad example. I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that.
Right.
But I know you can script copy-paste operations.
In IE,
Okay.
you can,
Only in IE.
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
You can do it in Mozilla, but you kind of have to lift heaven and earth to do it.
Right.
So.
Okay.
So we, with that in mind, we intentionally did not use that as part of the implementation. So the control implementation that we have actually behind the scenes uses a regular text area on top of the icon that you see. And so it's really like when you click on it and see the context menu, you're actually pasting text into that text area, and then our script is getting that and then doing something with it. But so it is, in our case, it's always user initiated. There's no way to read what's on the live clipboard until the user actually pastes into your control.
Understood. That's a good point. Because excellent. But I just wanted to ask because it's always people are always going to ask questions like that. Like, so I mean, I can automate, cut and paste. So how, but you just mentioned why that wouldn't work.
Right.
Clearly, you're thinking about this stuff as you're building.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because that's a part of the problem with the web. It's wired, but your wires are, you're putting wires together through a sea of sharks.
Yeah.
And at each corner, you never know where you made a mistake.
Yeah.
So
it's
scary.
something we get a lot too. People always say, "Well, you must be using exec command or exec script," and we're like, "No, it's a little different this time."
Yeah, we're using the built-in cut and paste operations using the mouse.
And that's why it works in other browsers as well.
That's right.
Now, for extensibility reasons, how do you cut and paste without being able to use a mouse? Can you do that on a keyboard?
You can do tab. You can tab through. You can use the edit, edit menu and copy paste through there. So that's one of the advantages of instead of using exec command, using it's kind of a hack, but it works by using the text area. As you basically you're using the native browser support for copy and paste, whether that be Firefox or IE or whatever. So the actual right-click menu, if you do right-click, might look different in each browser, or the edit menu command might be slightly different in each browser, but it's the same. It's the same as copying, selected text or something.
It's the same event, right? Something happened. Something's on the clipboard. Something's ready to be pasted.
Right.
Yeah, and it's subtle, but this should map a lot to the way people do copy and paste on the desktop, right? You can right-click and say copy, or I can hit Control-C, or I can tab around to the component I want, go to the edit menu, and then do something. So again, going back to the consistent experience between the web and desktop apps, how do I copy and paste? I have three ways: right-clicking, left-clicking, or keyboarding.
But of course, the live clipboard is a much more lightweight solution than dehydrating an object and rehydrating it when you're doing like cutting and pasting from the desktop to an application.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So at least that's what we did before with managed code. With some of the objects, we would just serialize them and then deserialize them on the paste operation.
You could do that theoretically if you wanted. And there's nothing preventing you from doing that with live clipboard, but I'd say in general, most of the scenarios that we anticipate are more lightweight objects,
which is very cool.
Another goal, again, you won't see necessarily in implementation or in the specification, but another goal for live clipboard was the idea that we didn't want to invent a vocabulary for data types, and we had many internal discussions about it because we were saying, well, geez, if we could just define context in this consistent way. And Jack Ozzie, who we report to, he was very emphatic about trying to leverage what already exists. So a lot of references you'll see in the live clipboard specification refer to IANA-based types. So when you see vcard, text/vcard, or application/XHTML plus XML, these are all IANA types. So our base vocabulary, if you will, is based on IANA-defined types.
Okay.
And then we hope to grow that as time goes on to handle, whatever
Custom
card
types.
space, info cards, whatever, as things emerge, as long as it's representable in XML.
Fantastic. Very cool. So what is what's the feedback then from the community so far?
It's been great.
Okay.
I think from the moment that Ray gave us demoed eTech, we've had tons of great response from the usual suspects, plus just everyone blogging about it. People are excited about it, and we're really happy about that because we did make a concerted effort that we want to please the community at large. We're not trying to create a totally Microsoft-centric technology or whatnot. We want something, well, as Ray calls it, his gift to the web, right? This is something that, if people use it, I think it's going to make the web a better place for everyone. It's not just, there's no hidden agenda that we have for using this stuff.
Very cool. Well, there's a lot of developers that'll be watching this, and I'm sure they'll have lots of questions, and hopefully you guys could do a couple screencasts for Channel 9.
Definitely.
That
Why
would be
not?
great.
It's a self-publishing model. You guys can party as you will.
Okay. We have existing screencasts. So
Very cool. We'll link to those from the Channel 9 video.
Very cool.
Yeah, a couple additional thoughts.
Sure.
We're talking a lot about Live Clipboard, which is a fantastic bridging technology. There's also simple sharing extensions. They're not dependent upon each other, but they go really well together. And a lot of the demos Matt has worked on have shown how to link the two together. So how do I create a reference to a contact so I can get updates? It's almost like when Matt was referring to Olay linking with the Paste Special. So we hope that people not only look at Live Clipboard, but they look at simple sharing extensions as well, because they both solve different problem spaces independently, but they work really well together.